really interesting. I just want to give a quick shout out to Richard Amable from Peru, who says hello to my dear friend El Grindio.
I want to apologize to all the YouTube folks. I just went live. I didn't hit the go live button, and I apologize for that. Apparently, I thought it would automatically go at 1 o'clock. It did not, and we were having some trouble with audio. We're still having a little bit of trouble with audio on me, and we'll figure that out.
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. Sarah Coffey says doesn't seem to be working on YouTube. Yeah, Nate just addressed that. We are now live on YouTube. Sorry for the delay. Yeah. So, anyways, back to Richard. Richard is an amazing guide from Peru. And El Grindio is a little joke about back in the 80s and 90s when I was doing field work in the Amazon. There were tourists who would go down to have psychedelic experiences with like ayahuasca and yapo and stuff like that. And the locals called those tourist grindios. Gringo Indian grindios.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So good to see you, Richard.
Let's talk birds.
Let's talk birds.
Yeah.
So yeah,
sorry about that, YouTube. Sorry. I apologize again, YouTube folks. I guess I need to change.
Welcome to live TV.
Welcome to live TV.
So
anyway, I think I would notice the big blue go live button at the top of my screen, and yet.
Well, I'm looking at 4 screens, so if you're anything like me, I mean, it's easy to miss. Yeah. So anyways, yes, we will be talking birds here in just a minute. Well, we're talking birds right now. And like I said, we want to hear from you guys. So if you've got anything to say, any questions, anything cool, drop it in the comments. And we've got a couple of housekeeping things to talk about too before we.
Jimbo C asks, what's the theme this week? Do we have a theme, Greg?
Not really. But it's all
it's a grab bag. It's a smorgasbord.
It's a little bit of a grab bag this time. Yeah.
You know, smorgasbord is Swedish for a sandwich board.
I had no clue, but thank you for that.
Now you know.
So, if you are a podcast listener, if you like listening to podcasts, the very best, in my opinion, natural history podcast is, of course, the
way
ABA,
better than those Bigfoot podcasts that are ahead of us in the Apple rankings. That's for sure. We talk about real animals.
The American Birding Podcast, hosted by none other than Nate Swick here.
Yours truly.
And so this month in birding, you've got a good line. What's going on with this month in birding, which is, by the way, featured on our homepage right now. So you can just go to aba.org and it's right there. So what's going on with this month in birding, Nate?
This month in birding is our weekly roundtable discussion panel where we bring 3 other birders and myself in to talk about whatever is going on in the birding world. Whatever cool studies have come out, any sort of regular press mentions of birding. This week we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about takahe reintroduction in New Zealand. We talked about birding at night. We talked about that really interesting study that came out in the LA Times about how historic redlining affects bird diversity in neighborhoods. It was a fascinating grab bag of smorgasbord, sandwich board, if you would, of discussion topics having to do with birds. We do it every month with a group of about 20 people that I mix and match every time. Some fun people on there. Martha, Miko, and Dexter are 3 excellent bird talking folks.
Yeah. And
Greg, you were on a podcast recently, weren't you? On Al and George Armisted's
I was on Al and George's Lifeless podcast, and that was a heck of a lot of fun.
That's a good one. I've been on that one before.
We wound up going long, which we just were having so much fun.
Surprised.
We talked about the fantasy birding game, which is a whole lot of fun, and all kinds of things. But yeah, that's a good fun podcast with Alvaro Jaramillo and George Armistead.
Yeah, that's another good one too.
Two of the ABA area's premier birding guides.
2 FABAs.
Absolutely.
Friends of the ABA.
And also, if especially for you guys, it's kind of late to travel unless you are prone to just jumping out of the bed and jumping in your car and driving a bit. But if you're in the Minneapolis
you live in
area,
Minneapolis, you don't have to drive far.
Exactly. If you are in the Minneapolis area, starting tomorrow, we have our ABA Community Weekend, which is a fun weekend of birding excursions and stuff. It is free. If you go to aba.org, it is prominently featured on the home page. All you have to do is sign up and show up. I saw a couple people bailed on their sign up, just said, "Oh, we're not going to be there," which is no big deal. Stuff happens, but because of the weather, because they're going to get the cold that we're getting tonight, they've got now, and it's supposed to snow tonight or tomorrow there, and it's supposed to snow here on Monday. But I'm going to tell you,
it's Minnesota in October. You get what you get.
Minnesota in October, with a snowstorm coming in, or that big of a weather shift, the birding could be off the hook good. And as we've said so many times, some of the best birding is in some of the worst weather. And
pine siskins.
Oh, the siskins
buckets and buckets and buckets of pine siskins.
Buckets of pine siskins. They are moving in huge numbers.
Dump trucks.
So yeah, bundle up, put on the big boots and the big coat, and go out and look for some birds in Minneapolis this weekend with the ABA staff led by Katinka, who will be there leading this. Have some fun birding.
Greg, we have vamped for 15 minutes. I think it's time for us to start talking about birds.
Yes, it's okay. We're still.
We've had complaints. We've had complaints.
Oh, we've only had one. We've only had one.
Complaints sting more than the compliments. I'll be honest. That's just the nature.
That's
of
true. They do tend to sting. So this one comes from Santa Ana, California, it looks like
Greg. This bird is not in any of my field guides to North American birds.
Oh yes, it is, my friend.
Is it in the newer ones?
It's in Sibley. It's in Sibley 2. It's in Sibley 2, and I'll bet it's in the newish. Let's see here. Is it in Nat Geo? I can't tell. But anyways, what are we looking at here with this bird?
Sparrowy, really, but it doesn't look like any sparrows that are native to North America.
Well,
what's going
on with that red bill?
It's big, and we don't have any large red-billed sparrows that are native. There's some red-billed birds. Cardinal, notably, a bird with a red bill.
It's got a bill like a cardinal.
This is not a cardinal.
It's a little short, stubby. Alex Cruz Chisnall says waxy bill. There's a hint.
Waxy.
There's a hint. But yeah, so it looks like a little sparrow with kind of a lot of pattern, a white breast,
a lot of pattern,
this big red honking bill. And like I said, this is in the second edition of the Sibley Guide. But this is one of those birds that's extremely local in the ABA area, being I think it's just in South Coastal California, maybe South Texas.
South Texas? I don't know.
Or somewhere, maybe Houston.
Oh, you're talking about. Sorry, I was off trying to figure out my sound issues. Houston, maybe.
Yeah, I think
I don't
Houston.
know. There's a lot of weird stuff in Houston.
Maybe South. You know what? I've seen pictures from South Florida too. We've done pictures.
There
of
are
this.
Well, South Florida's a free-flying aviary. There, you don't
That's
know what
true.
you're going to end up there. Houston is increasingly the same way. Maybe there are red bishops in Houston, which are also in Southern California. So I don't know. It's hard to keep track on where all these sort of invasive non-native birds are coming from and where they are. It's an ongoing concern.
Yes, and this is a species that has been really gaining a foothold in Southern California to the point where it's like downright common. And as John Lowry, one of our ABA staffers, is pointing out in the chat in Facebook, this is an East African species. This is a pin-tailed whydah, and this is a young male. And it's a
pin-tailed whydah. cool looking bird. Looks like a bizarro scissor-tail flycatcher.
It does, and it's a bird that we get here on a fairly regular basis because it looks like a lot of our birds, but doesn't look like any of our birds, depending on the plumage. Although, the males, although the males in breeding finery are utterly unique here and very hard to mistake for anything.
They are. They've got very long tails, as befitting the name. They've got kind of a cool little cap and bright red. I've seen them in sub-Saharan Africa. They are, where they're supposed to be. They're neat.
Right.
They're a nest brood parasite. They lay their eggs in other nests, other songbirds' nests. And interestingly enough, that was thought to be a worry when these things were starting to take off in Southern California. They were worried that they were going to start parasitizing native bird species. But it turns out they don't actually do that. They parasitize the nests of another non-native bird, the red bishop or orange bishop. I forget which one is down there. But it's those bishops, which are also finches or finch analogs. And they pretty much like laying their eggs just in those nests instead of our native birds. So it's an invasive species that is sort of a benign invasive.
Okay.
It's in Nat Geo 7, says Chris Ortega. Yes, thank you. It's in the newer field guides.
This next one comes to us from Kyle, Texas. Well, I see webbed feet and a long tail and a long bill. What do we got?
Yeah, long bill, but not one that ends in a point, so it kind of curves down. So this isn't a heron. The webbed feet and the short legs would kind of discourage that. But some of that all black, brownish body and very long body and long neck, so it's long front to back. There's really only one group of birds that looks like that. Well, there's a couple, but none with a beak.
Mergansers.
Mergansers, and loons also have very long bodies, but they tend not to have a beak like that. Merganser, I don't know, the tail's not right for merganser. The tail's a bit too long for a merganser.
True, and our mergansers at least all have really they have pattern on the wings. So even the females have white wing patches, or there's some pattern. The same thing with the grebes. They have some pattern on the wings. Loons. Loons have heavier bills, shorter tails, and just are heavier birds. And as Nate was saying, this really, once you start working through the list of things these birds might be, you kind of land on cormorants.
Cormorants,
which
are
down
in Kyle, Texas. There would be two species of cormorant that you'd want to be considering, although cormorants are found across most of the species.
It's gotten to the point now where pretty much anywhere in the lower 48 and immediately adjacent Canada, you should look at if you've got a weird looking cormorant, you should take another look at it, because I think almost every state's got a record of neotropic cormorant.
Yeah, they're really blown up for sure. We got our first a couple years ago here where I live in North Carolina, and we're already up like 3 or 4 now. So they're coming hot and heavy. But there are some things. But double crested is the default across much of the continent, and that's the one you will kind of want to start with.
Absolutely, except on the Pacific coast or in the extreme up in New England, where there are other species. But in Kyle, Texas, there are 2 species of cormorants. And so the thing we see on the birds on the left, which are the birds in question, thing I notice right away is the one on top. Well, first of all, they're exactly the same color, size, and all of that. So these 2 are the same species. They're the same age. For all we know, they might be nest mates, because this is a juvenile plumage cormorant. And by this time of the year, they get bleached out, and that dark chocolate brown turns to kind of a grayish tan, and sometimes like just snow white, and they get really weird looking.
Yeah, they can get very pale.
Yeah. But the yellow lures on the bird on top really stand out. It makes the face look very open and plain, and it makes the bill look bigger, because the lures, the base of that bill goes all the way up to the eye. So the 2 birds in the middle are neotropic cormorants, and the 2 birds on the left are double-crested cormorants. And I guess, who was it that asked if we have a theme today? I think the theme is going to be Gestalt, because there's
it's always the theme.
There's a couple. There's
the eternal theme.
It's the eternal theme. So Gestalt, for those who are not familiar with the term, is sort of greater than the sum of its parts, and it's a look and feel, a taste, a flavor, sort of the essence of the bird, the vibe. And so if we look especially at the middle dark bird, which is a neotropic cormorant juvenile, first of all, you'll see it's darker. They tend to be darker than double-crested in juvenile plumage. But again, these birds can get bleached out, and it's hard to say. But look at how much more compact, shorter necked.
Yes.
It's just the whole bird is just more compact than the double-crested, which has kind of a longer, lankier neck. But you can see from the neotropic cormorant above, in the middle, the dark bird with its wing up, you can see the underside. They can stretch their neck out and look kind of lanky too, but still look at how it's not as, I don't know. Help me out here, Nate. It's not as long and lanky and
yeah. I mean, when they're next to each other, the differences are quite clear.
Well, that's where the inset is going to. Yes.
Yeah,
so,
and you do see them together frequently,
absolutely,
especially in places like Kyle, Texas. But their original photo doesn't show; it's just one bird. But neotropic is just a more compact bird with a longer tail. It's a different shape. It feels different. It's usually got a little bit of white around the base of the bill, though not always.
Yeah.
But it's darker. In double-crested cormorants, it's actually easier this time of year than it is a lot of other times of year, because double-crested cormorants, especially these juvie birds, are just so pale. And a neotropic cormorant is going to stand out like a sore thumb if you see one amongst double-crested cormorants this time of year.
Yes, and so one other thing you can see here, though, that I pointed out earlier is the lores, and you'll notice how the two neotropic cormorants there have dark lores, which gives
it makes the face feel more kind of compact. Yeah,
exactly.
Or closed. Yeah,
exactly, and it's really obvious between the bird up on top where the face is in sunlight, and you can really see the color of the skin going all the way up to the eyes, and the bill is actually shorter, but as Nate said, if you see these birds next to each other, as we have in the inset, the size difference is pretty obvious. Neotropic is literally half the size of a double-crested cormorant. But in the comparison here, I made them the same size because when birds are flying like that, there's nothing to judge them by. There's nothing to compare them with, and it's hawk watching. Anytime birds are flying without a direct comparison to another bird, you really can't tell how big or small it is. And I can't tell how many times, I've been out, we've seen a bird fly, and somebody says, "Oh, it looked too small." How can you tell? You can't tell. And that is a big pitfall that beginning birders fall into. Oh, it looked too big or too small. No, you can't tell.
And I think when people are saying that, what they actually mean, and we've talked about that here on this program before, is that they're talking about proportion, they're talking about vibe, gestalt, however you want to talk. They're talking about how the bird feels, the shape of the bird, how it feels.
Absolutely.
And when you say it looks small, what you're basically talking about, it looks compact. The head looks big compared to the body. The tail looks maybe a little bit long. The wings look a little bit broader, and so everything seems kind of more compacted and therefore small. Though the actual size is a difficult thing to sort of get around. I think about pectoral sandpiper and least sandpiper.
Absolutely.
Because they have almost exactly the same plumage, almost exactly the same bare parts, a very similar bill shape. But we talk about least sandpiper looking small. What we're talking about is the body and the head. The comparison between the body and the head. The head looks big compared to the body, whereas in the pectoral sandpiper, they look like they got a little tiny pea head on top of that big old fat body. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about large, small, big, whatever.
Yes.
I think most of the time.
Yes. Well, yes and no. And what I'm talking about also is actual size. If you see a pectoral, if you see a pectoral and a least sandpiper standing side by side, it's like these two cormorants.
Huge.
It's obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
I mean, how many times on What's This Bird we've had somebody post a picture of an American robin sitting at the very tip top of a pine tree or something, and they're convinced it's a hawk because you can't judge the size, and it's hard. And the point I'm trying to get across is that is a very common pitfall that even experienced birders get into, where your brain says something that's not true because whatever, and you got to be aware of it. So yes, these are two double-crested cormorants on the left that are compared with two neotropic cormorants scaled to size to match the size of the double-cresteds. They are not that big in real life. The inset, however, shows us how big they are in real life, just in case anybody's lost track of what the heck we're talking about. Okay. The porch screen bird.
The porch screen bird. Porch screen feeder hook bird.
Yeah. So, this is, again, Gestalt. Look at this bird. I know immediately what it is.
It's exactly right. And when you start to pin it down and talk about why you know what it is, it's hard because the field marks that you're intuiting field marks that you can't really see
precisely
through in this photo through the screen.
Precisely. We can't see the bill. We can't see the feet. We can't see. We have an
TV's which IG filter is that?
We have an implication. We have an implication of the primary length, and maybe some kind of an implication of a wing bar, but really where that it doesn't look like it. It looks like that's just a pattern created by the screen. But anyone who's familiar with this bird, this species, looks at it and just immediately knows what it is. Yeah. And it is, of course, an eastern phoebe. And if we compare it here to an eastern phoebe that is not behind a porch screen, you can see we've got the dark head, the pale underparts, the posture, the tail length, the wing length. Everything fits.
Yeah.
And as Nate said, even though we couldn't accurately see it, we kind of could.
So we have a question in the YouTube comments. Why isn't this eastern kingbird?
Why isn't this eastern kingbird? A juvenile eastern kingbird would show more of a sorry, I'm the word isn't coming up.
Well,
more contrast between the back and the head.
I agree.
But
yes.
but an adult would not. It would appear more black on the back, and the head is definitely black.
And I think this is another.
Where is this bird from?
Another situation,
Florida?
Orlando, Florida. I think this is another situation where we're talking about how it looks. We're talking about proportion a lot too, because eastern kingbird is a bigger bird.
It is
than eastern phoebe. It's a longer bird.
It's got a shorter tail.
It's got a shorter tail and longer wings. It's got so its body looks kind of longer, like more lanky from top. It's not quite as chesty as the eastern phoebe, and the head compared to the body is much smaller on an eastern kingbird. Phoebe's got a big old kind of buffalo-shaped head. That is very distinctive. It's like it's a big-headed flycatcher, like all our small flycatchers are. Epidendanax, peewees, all of them look small because the head is so big on top of that small body. Whereas kingbirds, most kingbirds, eastern kingbird seems more than most. With some of those tropicals and couches kingbirds can look really big-headed too, but the head looks smaller compared to the body on that bird, and so it gives you a different sense, a different gestalt, a different vibe than what we're seeing here.
And also, if this bird, looking at this bird in real life, it would most likely be bobbing its tail, which would immediately, tell you that this is a phoebe and not necessarily a kingbird. But yeah, the overall shape, and that's a really, and especially in Florida. where there might actually still be kingbirds. Because most of the kingbirds have left.
Handful of them winter.
Yeah. I should have thrown a kingbird in there for comparison. My brain didn't go to that when I was looking at this, and partially because
you're so familiar with Eastern Phoebe. Like,
it was just so slammed on Phoebe that I didn't. Okay. But anyway, that's a good question, and I hope that we answered that to your satisfaction.
Gestalt.
Right.
Because we're all German philosophers here. Gestalt is something that we
are. So here we've got 4 birds, and it looks like there's 2 of one type and then 2 of another type.
Sure. Yep. 4 big black soaring birds from Pike County, Kentucky. Let's start with the top ones first. This is a bird that I think a lot of us are extremely familiar with.
Yep.
So if I say that it's got that really dark body, relatively small head, very dark leading edge of the wing, and silvery underside of the primary of the flight feathers. And even in my head, I can see these birds flying. I can see their kind of teeter-tottery flight, especially the one on the left. These are turkey vultures.
Yes, and you've got as Nate said, you've got that silvery flight feathers that kind of flash as they glide and kind of
wobble back and forth.
They fly in a dihedral and wobble back and forth, and you can see the bird on the right has the wings up like this. That is dihedral. This is flat. Mm-hmm. And then the 2 other birds, those are because turkey vulture is one of our largest soaring birds across most of the ABA area.
When it's soaring, because those wings are very large.
Yeah.
And long.
So
these are big ones too.
The birds behind them are not small.
Nope.
So I see a couple of things. 1, they're all black, and 2, they have long tails. And the tails
very distinctive shape.
The tails immediately stand out to me as something that is different, at least for me. Now, if I lived in eastern Kentucky near the mountains in Pike County, I'd probably be very familiar with this bird as a local. These are 2 common ravens that are chasing the turkey vultures for fun, because that's just what ravens do.
Ravens are. I think people tend to underestimate, people who perhaps are not familiar with ravens or don't have them regularly, they tend to underestimate how large they are.
Yes.
That is a big Persian, the world's largest Persian bird, for that matter. And they are frequently, equal in size to maybe a black vulture, which is a little bit stouter and shorter wing.
Or almost a red-tailed hawk. They're
almost a red-tailed hawk, and they like to soar too. Like they'll get up in those thermals, like the turkey vultures are doing. They're probably looking for similar stuff. They're probably following the turkey vultures. The turkey vultures are very good at finding dead things, and the ravens know that, and they'll kind of soar in thermals with turkey vultures and kind of tool around with them. So you see them soaring like this very, very often.
Yeah, and I'm envious of people who have ravens in their neighborhood, because ravens also, they love to play. They get up in the sky, and if there's a nice breeze and thermals, they play, they soar, they circle, they dive bomb each other, they dive bomb other things. They will chase off other birds the way crows and all corvids do. But in addition to all that, they just goof around. They're really, really awesome birds.
Sarah Coffey asks in YouTube, do ravens flock? And I would say generally not as much as crows do. You'll see crows in absolutely massive flocks, especially at roosts. And ravens tend not to get in, large groups like that. But I have seen them in, half a dozen to 10 birds in places where they're common up in the southern Appalachians. They're not as much of a flocking bird as some, but they will from time to time get fairly sizable.
The only time I've ever actually seen a conspiracy of ravens versus a murder of crows. Yes, a conspiracy of ravens is at like a dead deer. Where they come together for some food source. But ravens are generally non-migratory. They don't roost in big groups. They're family birds that tend to stay at home with their mate and their families.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone told me they saw them in a flock. But I usually see them in ones and twos. But I am also on the edge of their range where I live. We have them in my county, but they're not super common. I just see them every once in a while.
Having said that, common raven is another species that is expanding its range, especially in Wisconsin and Michigan, and especially in Michigan.
On the southeast too.
On the southwest part of Michigan, which, I've birded around here for a long time. Never would you think about having ravens, and now they're regular, and they've even been showing up in northern Indiana somewhat regularly. So
we had one on the Outer Banks a couple of years ago, which was like one of the most shocking bird reports I heard since I moved here in North Carolina, and that includes a lot of really weird tube noses in the Gulf Stream. But a raven on the Outer Banks, get out of here! That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Neitzel in YouTube says large family groups will play in late summer in the Cascades or Rockies. Yep, that seems about right.
Heidi McCulloch says still no accepted records in Missouri. I can't confirm or deny that. I think that's right. It's a northern bird. And Gavin Alvin asks why they don't exist in the southeast.
They're in the Appalachians, and they're moving into the Piedmont with some regularity. So they're down here. They come. I mean, they're in the high country.
Definitely. It is a northern and a mountain.
2,500 feet.
Yeah, it is a bird of the Mountain West and the northern parts of the ABA area here. But as we've been saying, they are slowly moving south, expanding their range to the south, and moving away from the kind of what we think of traditional raven habitat, which is a lot of conifers and up in the mountains and so on and so on. When
I saw the location for this sighting, I was like, "Ooh, they're in Kentucky now." So I guess in eastern Kentucky, probably.
Eastern Kentucky, yeah, Eastern Kentucky. All righty then. Oh, I know you love these, Nate.
Which bird are we doing?
Hey, we're doing all of them.
Okay.
There is nothing better than a strand full of birds standing around.
Yeah, John Scavetta says they have them in Charlotte. Ravens in Charlotte. I mean, like 15 years ago, that would have been like, what?
Yeah.
And now they're down there. I'm not surprised.
So, this is a pan of the same sand spit. So starting from left to right, top to bottom, we will see the same. Let's see here. Where is the bird that sort of nails it? Oh yeah, you'll see the same gull in the center of the top picture, sleeping at the left of the bottom picture, just so you can get your head around what we're looking at here.
Yeah, there's a gull with its head in its back, and then there's a laughing gull in the front. A young, getting ahead of myself.
You are
laughing gull. The bottom right of the upper photo and the middle of the lower photo, so you kind of get a sense of where we are. So you're making all these comps, Greg. You couldn't stitch these together.
No, we're going with raw data here. So going from left to right, top to bottom, we've got what looks like a fairly big gull, and looking at what appear to be terns behind it with the orange bill and sort of like a little sort of a crest coming off there. The bird at the far left, you can actually see the crest getting blown up in the air. With those orange bills, those are royal terns. And
white forehead, orange bill, the black kind of old man, the old man kind of hairline that goes around there that royal terns have for most of the year. And then the big old gull. I guess we're gonna move on to the big old gull.
The big old gull looks like a herring gull to me. We can't see its bill or its face, but that sort of muddy dark head. And it looks like it may be in like the end of it may be an adult that's molting. It's hard to tell from this picture, but it looks like it has pink. It looks like it has pink legs. So I feel happy calling this a herring gull. Going
Yeah,
back to
big herring. That kind of the smattering, the feathers on the back of the head. Pretty classic.
Yeah.
Not breeding herring. So
yeah, and going back to the terns for a second, if these were Caspian terns, well, for one thing, you wouldn't see the crest on the bird on the left. Caspians just don't have a crest, but they also have bigger, much deeper red bills. It's not
the bill would be very much more obvious. Kind of bright carrot, deep orange red.
Exactly. In the sort of going to the middle there of the top image, there we have another cormorant.
Assateague, I default would definitely be double crested. I'm sure they get great cormorant later in the year and that far south. I know they do.
Yeah.
I've seen them as far south as North Carolina and Eastern Shore of Virginia. But great cormorant would have a hip patch, a white hip patch.
If it was an adult,
which you would be able to see. Yeah, if it was an adult. But the kind of long tail there. I'd feel fine calling this one double crested cormorant. Still a little early for great cormorant anyway.
I agree. I think that a great cormorant would have a paler breast again, although double crested this time of year can look like anything as far as that's concerned. But also compared to the herring gull, the size fits better. They don't call great cormorant great for nothing. It is a big bird.
Yeah, it's got a big old blockhead.
Yeah.
Not that you'd be able to see it in this position, but just FYI.
Oh wait, so there is an Matt Agleski says he figured that your echo was a spooky Halloween effect to celebrate the season. That's weird. I'm not, I've got the volume down, so I'm listening through our. Oh my God! You know what? I think it's me. Hang on.
I wasn't gonna say anything now that we're on, but yeah, I think it is.
Right. Does the echo go away now?
Well, let me check.
Hello, testing. Does the echo go away?
Nope.
No. Oh well.
We'll just deal with it now.
I forgot to put my earbuds in. But in any case, so we've got a cormorant there. Going further to the right, we've got a bunch of small birds that are kind of brownish and on the beach there, and you see all of them in both pictures kind of spread out. They're almost half the size of the gulls there, the smaller gulls in the bottom picture. We do see a herring gull sleeping at the left. These look like black-bellied plovers to me. They're kind of leggy. The bills are kind of big.
Yeah, I agree with you. The other pluvialis plovers would be pretty uncommon this time of year. It wouldn't be entirely unlikely to come across an American golden plover or something in these flocks, but I don't see anything in any of these birds that would suggest that that's what that is. The young, especially juvenile black-bellied plovers, can look very kind of pale and tannish, which is sort of the look that these birds are giving me. Black-bellied plovers for me on this one, Greg.
Okay. I just noticed something else. And those of you, if you're listening, I think Nate's Nate's audio might have just been fixed. Nate, can you say something?
We'll see here because there's a little delay.
Now it sounds worse.
No, it's fixed. It's fixed, Greg. We're good.
Oh, it is fixed.
Yep.
Okay. Now it seems to be. Now it seems to be. Let's see here. And let's see if we can do. Okay, how does that all sound to everybody?
Should be good. It sounds good for me when I'm listening.
Okay,
so we should be good to go.
How does that sound for people on the other end there?
Fixed. Yes, fixed. Everyone says.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's strange. When I opened up the software to start this broadcast, it seems that all of my audio settings got zapped. And I took for granted that everything was set properly without actually looking. So I apologize for that. I thought everything was ready to go. Okay, well, back to the birds.
It was a spooky, as Matt says, it was a spooky seasonal effect.
It was.
So,
all
the brown shorebirds, plovers. Yes, all the brown shorebirds. Well, no, not all the brown shorebirds.
No.
I'm jumping the gun. Yes, there are most of the brown shorebirds are plovers.
Our black-bellied plovers, they got big, round bodies. Even the way they are here, you can kind of see the big eye and kind of the big bill. And compared to the size of the laughing gull, which is on the top picture, we have two ring-billed gulls sleeping at the water's edge, and then the darker-backed bird with the dark bill and the little black mark around the eye. That is a laughing gull in winter plumage. And those birds, with the size of the cormorant and the size of the herring gull, we get a really good, again, now we have direct comparison. So we can see just how big or small these birds are. And what we're doing is inferring a lot by that. So in the middle right of the top picture, we have two birds that are smaller. There's one right behind the sleeping gull that's dark. And then one that's behind the plover that's about half the size of the plover. What do you think those are?
It's tough identifying shorebirds from this distance with this quality of photo, but just based on what I know to be in the area at the time. Well, let's start with the easy one, the one that is behind the sleeping gull that we can see in the lower left of the lower photo as well. I can't see a lot in there, but I can see a short-legged, long-bodied shorebird with a relatively short bill and what looks like a little bit of a white spur coming up in front of the wing. Is that one of the birds you're talking about, Greg?
It is, or a black patch on the breast, creating the white spur.
Recreating the white spur, in fact, essentially, which is a very classic pattern for a very common shorebird on the East Coast these days, most times a year, the ruddy turnstone.
Yes, and if you look at the top picture, the sleeping gull, the second from the right.
I wouldn't be able to use that bird. Oh yeah, so we're talking about the other small shorebird, right?
Well, no. We're using that's the same bird. It's just in the bottom picture, the turnstone has walked a couple feet to the left, so we can see it a little bit better. We can see it's short-tailed, long-winged, everything that Nate said. But in the top picture, I think it's still identifiable because you see that kind of dark breast and the size and the short bill. That just yells turnstone to me. And on the East Coast, ruddy turnstone would be the default.
They're very dark, even at a distance. It is a dark shorebird, and that's a great way to identify them at great distance, even when you can't see them very well.
And they are so dark in this time of year in young especially in juvenile plumage. The very first bird I saw when I walked out of the King Eider Hotel on St. Paul years ago was a ruddy turnstone standing in the middle of the road. And I thought it was a black turnstone because the plumage was so fresh, but black turnstone is just unknown up there. So now there's another
some records of them in like Atlantic Canada and Maine, I think. Black turnstone.
I meant in the Pribs.
No, not up there. I don't believe.
So then in the middle of the top picture and at the left of the bottom picture above the turnstone is a smaller sandpiper. This one I get a feeling for, but
there's a couple options.
Yeah, I mean my mind goes to Dunlin first.
Yeah. I think that's the more common one. That there'd be a lot of Dunlin on the East Coast right now. And the other one would be perhaps Western sandpiper, which is also a common wintering bird in the Southeast. But the bill looks. I mean, I apologize for the people that are squinting in at this photo as they watch it on Facebook.
Well, that's our theme. Phone. That's our theme. We're going by things we can infer rather than actually see.
It's true. It's what I can't tell that it's a very chunky shorebird, and Western tends to be a little more kind of lanky and longer legged. Dunlin is big and thick bodied with kind of a deep belly and a very long bill, which you can
more or less see in the lower photo. It's really hard to tell in the upper photo. Well, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to tell in both the photos, but I think Dunlin is your best guess, and I have no problem calling it a Dunlin.
I would agree. And then quickly moving down to the right, we have a young ring-billed gull. Compared with the adult laughing gull, we can see they are basically the same size. And we see the long wings, brown plumage, rather small bill of the ring-billed gull. And even at that, even at this resolution, no problem calling that a ring-billed gull.
Agree on that on all counts. And the laughing gulls. Did we talk about the laughing gulls?
Oh yeah, we talked about the laughing gulls.
Oh, I must have been trying to deal with something else.
Yeah, we were messing with the audio while I was talking about laughing gulls.
All right.
This is one of my favorite birds. From
bird,
Tillman County, Oklahoma. Everything about this bird is kind of unique for us in the ABA area. It really is.
True. It's true.
I will never forget. My wife called me frantically from a friend's house. They were sitting in the back drinking wine, and this bird was bouncing around on the lawn in the backyard. And she's like, "There's a pheasant in the backyard."
They're striking. It is a striking
No, it's not
bird.
a pheasant, but
when non-birders get a good look at this bird, I think we birders, it's very common. So we birders sort of we don't give it the credit it deserves as just a really, really fantastic looking bird. It was Roger Tory Peterson's spark bird, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So what we've got here is a bird with polka dots underneath. Okay, so that right away, that narrows down the field to almost
too many.
One bird, I think. Well, a few species of the same group. It's got this big black collar.
A bib.
A bib, thank you. And the bill shape. The bill shape is, look at that. It's
weird.
Stout, but it's kind of thrashery, but
Curvy.
heavier.
Yeah.
And then the thing that really jumps out, there's a couple of things. One really jumps out and one's very subtle. The tail, that long tail. And it looks like it looks like it's got these long spikes coming off the end of the tail.
It's like a tuning fork.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we got, Nate?
This is a woodpecker, believe it or not, even though it's not black and white like a lot of our other woodpeckers. It doesn't have a long, straight, sturdy bill like a lot of our woodpeckers. But that tail is very woodpeckery. Those two kind of that I was going to say trident, but trident is three. It's like a fork, with those stiff feathers that help it, brace itself as it goes after insects inside the trunk. Although this is a woodpecker that spends as much time on the ground as it does on the side of a tree. It's a northern flicker. The genus Colaptes is a very unique genus of woodpeckers, and northern flicker is the most widespread, found throughout the North America from coast to coast. Different forms on either one. Tillman County, Oklahoma is right in the hybrid zone. I don't think you can make any identification as to which one this is. Actually, it looks like a yellow to me. But
I'm looking at it on
so?
a big monitor, and I see salmon pink on the underside of that tail.
All right, I'll give you that.
I would call it a red shafted if I had to, one way or the other.
Well, in Tillman County, Oklahoma, it could be a one of those mixed birds, one of those in betweeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And the so the bill shape is this is our ground feeding woodpecker across the world where woodpeckers are found. It seems every area has its ground feeding woodpecker that have adapted to tearing open ant nests versus then tearing open trees.
A lot of them in this genus too, in the Americas.
Yes, and we can also see, if we look closely, the zygodactyl feet. We see the two gray toes over the top of the branch on both feet, which tell us that this has two toes going forward and 2 toes backwards, which is called zygodactyl, and that's all woodpeckers.
Intergrade. John's correct. Intergrade
have
is the
that.
word I'm looking for. Although
It could be an intergrade, sure.
Although I do actually, looking at it again, I think the lack of a mustache, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, means that this is a female red shafted rather than
Yes.
like female yellow shafted would have is it a red one or a black one?
So Heidi McCulloch says, it's so big, my mother said, Heidi, there's a hawk on the bird feeder. And
They are big.
they got a speeding ticket on their way to work because they were watching it too long. They are not small birds. And I remember I picked up an injured one once, and I was really, it's a handful. It is a handful.
And they are they're highly migratory, which is unique to a lot of our woodpeckers. Yes. And this is kind of peak flicker migrating time. They are just migrating in large numbers right now. So if you get a big migration night, you might show up at your hot spot the next morning and just be wall-to-wall flickers. That's happened to me before.
Hoopoe versus Flicker. Who wins the hearts of the birding world? John says, you know what? We just don't have time for that right now.
That's a discussion for another time.
we are coming up on the hour, and we still got some birds to get through here.
Oh, my God. All right. Move on. This is a lightning round.
Lightning round. Okay, this duck. These are 3 pictures of the same duck from Morrow County, Ohio. Big, blackish duck with that big honking bill and 2 white spots on the face. Boy, you go through your ducks right away, you're going to land on Scoters.
Scoters are big black sea ducks. They winter in large numbers in the Great Lakes, and so you will see a lot of them this time of year, especially on the really cold years when the Great Lakes freeze over. They'll start moving off into those little farm ponds and reservoirs and all that stuff. So a good opportunity to see them.
And canals with warm water outflows. One of the best places to see Scoters up close. When the bigger bodies of water are frozen. So looking at these pictures, I can see what looks to me, and again, they're right on the edge of being like slam dunk. But for one thing, we don't see any white in the wing in any of these pictures. Now, white-winged Scoter can be very good at hiding the big white patches in their wings. So don't think that is a field mark that, you see a Scoter with 2 white patches in the face and you don't see white in the wing. It's got to be a surf Scoter. No, because they can hide it really well. What we're looking at here, though, is the feathering and the base of the bill. I'm going to cut to the comp. So here we have a white-winged Scoter in back and a surf Scoter in front. And notice how the surf Scoter in front, the feathering comes up to the gape, just like right here, whereas the white-winged Scoter has this big wedge of feathers that come almost to the nostril, and that white patch extends out into that white feathering, which gives the white patch in front of the eye a different shape, and it just gives the whole face a different look.
Longer, so makes it look longer.
It does. So on sitting birds, that's what you want to look for. On flying birds, it's a piece of cake because you can see the white.
You see the white.
You can see the white wing.
Yeah. And white-winged Scoter is actually significantly larger than the other 2 Scoters. Like it is a chunky bird. So if you see them together, that will stand up quite a bit too. And also, just to point out that you can see the bill shape difference. Both in the birds, the 3 photos that we saw before, and also in this comp that Greg has thrown up. Surf Scoter has that very sharp triangular bill. It's like a piece of candy corn in the males, but it's the same shape as a piece of candy corn in the young birds and female types. It's like a straight line straight down from the forehead all the way to the tip. You can see it really well in photos 1 and 3. A little bit of foreshortening in the second photo, upper right, where it looks a little bit curvy, but it's still more or less pretty much a triangular wedge. Where in the white-winged Scoter, it's a slope. It's like kind of drops in the middle and smooths out. And that's the sort of thing that'll stand out to you.
And I would guess that this is a young male just by how thick and chunky the base of the bill is, because if we look at the comp, it's not quite the same. And the that's a female in the comp, and the male surf Scoter, has that huge, almost toucan,
it's a-
like Bill with all the colors
it's a cool
and everything on
bird,
it.
the
It's
adult
a
males,
cool
for
looking
sure.
bird.
There's no question about that bird, but it's the the female types, the young birds, the young males
Yeah.
that will give you trouble this time of year. And if you see a mixed flock, I don't always. Well, I mean, this is me speaking based on my experience on the coast of the southeast, where white-winged is probably the least common of the three scoters, and black and surf are quite common in mixed flocks frequently. But when you do see white-winged sitting on the water, a lot of times you do see the fact that it is a much larger body bird, 50% larger, just heftier, heavier bird than both surf and black, and that is the sort of thing that's going to stand out in a mixed flock. But these they don't always accommodate you that way. You get these solo birds, and sometimes it can be a little bit tricky.
Absolutely. So the
Good
bird
Scoter
in
migration
question,
series time of year too. A lot of Scoters moving right now.
absolutely.
Sorry, keep interrupting.
No, that's okay. The bird in question is a surf Scoter, and here we have a white-winged Scoter in the back compared with the surf Scoter in front. Okay, this is what we're going to end on. This bird, I'll tell you, when I first saw this, my heart caught in my throat because I looked at the first picture first, and my brain went immediately to some weird Eastern European bunting. I just what the heck is this thing?
My brain kind of fizzed out on this one too, Greg.
But then looking at the other two pictures, it's weird because you become so familiar with genera and families that your brain just starts to go, no dummy.
Yeah.
And the back of my brain is yelling, Spizella.
Yeah.
So this bird is apparently a hybrid field sparrow, chipping sparrow. And the bottom picture is a chipping sparrow that is very nicely queued up next to it at the feeder or wherever they are. But look at how wild that bird looks. That is such a crazy bird.
You can definitely see both parents in that bird.
Yeah.
The first thing that stand out to, I thought maybe a brewer's sparrow too, because they tend to be kind of streaky crested with a nice big white eye ring. And brewer's sparrow, this is a good time of year for brewer's sparrow. There's a lot of interior west birds vagrating to the east. But yeah, the malar did not connect. It did not, that doesn't look like a brewer's sparrow. There's way too much pattern on the back and on the wings.
Exactly.
Brewer's sparrow tends to be kind of pale and very thin kind of lines, not big and thick like this bird. The back looks like a chipping sparrow.
And even
and
so,
the
a
head
brewer's
has that big old white, eye ring and no eye line, which is weird. It's it's missing stuff.
Exactly.
It's got what hybrids look like.
It's got that open gray face of a field sparrow, and even a brewer's sparrow, which doesn't have the face pattern of a clay colored or a chipping. It's very open, but there is a face pattern, and it's there, and it's distinct, even though if it's different. But this bird doesn't have that. But also look in two of the pictures, you can see it's got a whitish rump, which also is where
weird.
the heck does that
Real
come
pale.
from?
Yeah, definitely not a chipping.
And there are a few other examples of pictures of this hybrid combo in the Macaulay Library, and the two or three that I saw, they also have that whitish patch on the rump.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that field sparrow and chipping sparrow would interbreed. They're fairly closely related, both in the same genus. That tends to be, when the hybrids happen, when they're closely related species. There's a lot of overlap in their ranges. I'm surprised they don't interbreed more than they do, because we're familiar with, or we know to look out for other sparrow hybrids like junco white-throated. That's another kind of common
right
one.
But that's another one that when you see it, you're like,
what the heck is that? Yeah.
That's
the weird thing about hybrids, is that they kind of short circuit your brain, because we both of us, Greg, we've been birding for a long time, and so we sort of intuit a lot of bird identification just kind of based on your gut. When you've done it long enough, your gut is usually right on a lot of these kind of difficult bird identification questions. And when your gut does not work, when you look at a bird like this, that's when the sparks start going. But yeah, neat bird.
Yeah, really cool bird. So again, for those of you who got lost in all the conversation of all of this is a hybrid between a field sparrow and a hybrid of, I should say, of a field sparrow and chipping sparrow.
Flipping
which,
sparrow.
Yeah, flipping. That's a flipping sparrow, which is a new one to me. So there, and that's one of the things I love about birding. Been doing this for 50 years, and I saw something new this week.
Always something new.
Something new, yes.
All right, we're over, Greg. Should we wrap this sucker up?
We are, yeah. So I just want to remind everyone, especially our ABA members, bop on over to ABA Community and join the discussions. There's all kinds of cool stuff happening there all the time. And for those of you who aren't members, hit it, Nate.
Hey, why don't you join the American Birding Association? We're a membership organization. We depend a great deal on members like you to help support our programs like this, What's This Bird, the podcast, all sorts of cool stuff that we do. Please consider joining the ABA for a price of a cup of coffee a month. It's way less expensive than like Netflix. So, and I feel like you get more out of it. So anyway, we'll be back in
And look at all those hearts flying up. Love you guys too.
Love 'em.
On Facebook, where there are a couple of really cool things happening coming up in the coming weeks for members only. So now is I can't really talk about it yet, but now's a good time to join. You'll thank me afterwards.
At the very least, go to aba.org and scroll down to the bottom and sign up for our Flight Calls newsletter. We don't sell your email to anyone else. We keep it
absolutely
in-house.
not.
And you'll get a message letting you know when we are about to go live. We'll be back in a couple weeks, maybe. I think I might be out of the country then, but we'll figure something out.
Rope Ted in here for one.
Yeah, maybe you get Ted. Anyway, we'll be back soon enough.
Yes.
We'll let you know. Back on ABA's. Like and subscribe and all that stuff, and we'll see you later.
Good to see all of you, and good birding.
Adios.